Chasing the Dragon podcast with CS. That would be me, Chris Smith, Connecticut's favorite martial artist, an all-around fun guy. And today I have a great guest, an awesome guest, a special guest, a friend of mine, which I do have friends. We've been friends for about 25 years, which is scary because that's really dating myself. But it's all right. It's cool. It has been 25 years. So today, this is the Eric Cologne episode. And if that name sounds familiar, you'll learn why later on. But I guarantee you've probably heard that name before. Anyhow, Eric, welcome. Thank you. It's good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me, man. How are you? Good to see you. Excited to be here. So when I saw you doing a podcast, I'm like, oh, what's up, Mr. Smith? Right.
Yeah.
Good. It's good, man. Talk about unique times, right? Get your mind going, do different things.
Sure. You know, I had to do something because I was getting bored and you end up with a lot of free time.
Yeah.
A lot of free time. And it's like, okay, so you go back into your own training. Good. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
mm-hmm.
You go into the next transition is you start working on your house.
That's never ending.
Yeah. And which is cool, but it's when it takes you in deep, you go in real deep.
Real deep. That's your mm-hmm.
So, but I needed to do something, that like made me feel connected to the martial arts still.
Yeah.
There hasn't been many tournaments. There hasn't been many fights. I mean, that all stopped for a long time.
Yeah.
Hence the podcast, So if I can't hang out with all the guys that I used to, I could at least talk to them about stuff and,
It's funny. We've known each other for 25 years. Every once in a while, I'll talk to my guys, my students, and they'll be like, oh, Cole, we need to get this in the gym or that in the gym. And I'm like, do you realize how spoiled rotten you guys are? I'm like, you got all these martial arts under one roof, and beautiful mats, we got a cage, we got a ring. I'm like, oh my God, man. I reckon back to when we would be training at different seminars and whatnot. Like,
yeah.
Oh man, the mats if we had mats.
If we had mats.
And then if we did, it was usually in my first place, we had no mats whatsoever. We just had the cement with the carpet that came with the place. So you never wanted mount because your top of your knees and the top of your feet will get all jacked up. You know what I mean? You're sitting there scraping your knees on cement. You're like, I'll take guard any day.
Right.
Yeah.
Long time. My first mats were they were made by Tiffin.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 3. I had 3 5x10s.
Like those fold out ones, right?
Fold out ones.
I got some ones back in the day, yeah.
Because we were rolling on carpet, which it sucks. Or and then you suggested that time the carpet padding that worked out great.
That's what we did with the blue mats. But when you jump rope, it sounded so loud. Like you would jump rope and the blue tarps you get at Walmart for $60. You'd be like whack 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 whack, and you can hear it for miles. I'm like, well, it's better than the cement. You know what I mean?
Right. And you know what? I actually liked the way they felt for rolling. They were nice. It felt soft.
It did the job.
It did the job. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know something? My son was like 2 when we were doing that.
Wow.
2 years old.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, no, he was a baby. I'm sorry. He was
under a year, right?
Under a year, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I remember, something? The first gyms you had if you had heavy bag, you had a heavy bag. You never have heavy bags. You had a heavy bag.
A bag, yeah.
And I bought my first heavy bag, my first banana bag off of Chris Ascari.
Yeah, Ascari. Ascari's basement was legendary for just. It was so crack up to this day. Like, all right, we're gonna roll. It was pure cement, no carpet, whatever. And he had a piece of cut rug that was like 4x5. They're like, okay, we're starting on this run. Like, and one move and you're off, and you'd be rolling cement, just murdering. And then we would jump rope, and his basement was low. So like I do it to this day when I jump rope. I like short ropes. People think I'm insane. My rope is going right over my head. I prefer that. And the big was like, why is that? Like for years of jumping in this basement where it's low,
right?
Keep it tight. And on top of it, whenever you would hit, because then he had a baby, it would wake the baby up. And then Mags would come down like, shh, keep quiet, the baby's like, oh, sorry. So like you couldn't hit the bag anymore for a little while. Speed bag. If you inadvertently walk by hit the speed bag, oh, you're asking for it. Mags would come down and kick your ass. You're like, oh, sorry, I forgot. Baby sleeping. And now, guys, now gyms are amazing compared to then, It's awesome.
Yeah, it's come a long way.
Oh my God.
So let's talk about that. You have owned Tong Dragon MMA,
sir,
for
25 years last October.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
It is.
Well, I'm very fortunate, blessed.
Yeah. And you've kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger for the most part.
For the most part.
You done growing?
Say again?
Are you done growing?
No, you always got to grow. You know what I mean? What they say, it's progress equals happiness, right? I gotta grow to something,
Sure.
We're like now we're growing. Besides our regular martial arts program, we got a strength conditioning program. My guy's Lee. He's one of my black armbands with Muay Thai for years.
Xanakis?
Yeah, Xanakis.
Yeah.
So he's been with me forever. Him and his whole family forever. Like his last son, he's got let's see, 4 boys, right? And like his last boy, the day of the birth, he's sending out pictures. Hey, everybody be born. Never forget the pounds and ounces healthy. He had a Tong Dragon shirt laying on top of him.
That's cool.
So he's right now. He had started a couple years ago with us his strength and conditioning program at Spartans. So we're growing that program real big, and thankfully we've survived, the COVID thing, and we're coming out the other end like everybody else, thankfully. But we were just going to try and grow. Always try and grow. But I would say, like most people, we just spent these past several months trying to recover.
Right.
Thankfully, we've been blessed, and we're definitely moving forward. So it's been 25 years. It's wild. Let me think about it. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. If someone had said to me that the whole pandemic thing was going to happen, I'd have been like, dude, you need to stop smoking that because it's not good for you. and I would have been way off base.
Yeah, right. I mean, remember when they first said it was 2 weeks, and like, 2 weeks would be good. It's been wild.
Just before it happened, I met up with some friends of mine who own schools, and there's like 3 or 4 of us when we sat down, and they were like, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I remember thinking, "Man, this is like, it's not that bad. It can't be that bad."
Right.
Me, the genius, it's not that bad. And then another friend of mine was like, "Oh man, this is just trying to scare us," And then this one guy was like, "Dude, I don't know, man. This thing's real. I'm scared." And I'm like, And then it starts to roll out where it's like, okay, 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, 2 weeks is cool. Like a little vacation.
Yeah. 2 weeks,
chill.
3 months. Like,
yeah.
And
then I remember when I knew it was getting bad when finally they when Bellator, when it was March 13th, and they were like, "Yeah, we're killing the show." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah. I showed up for that, and I ended up turning back around. Yeah, I stayed a little bit to avoid the traffic going home, and then I came back home. I was like, "Wow."
That's right. We talked. We talked that day.
Yeah.
That was nuts.
Yeah.
That was nuts.
Yeah. I was convinced that I had got the Rona like in December because I was out of the country, and then and I remember one day coming back. So it was like at the end of December. So like I remember one day in January just feeling really miserable for one day. But I was like, it's a 1 day sickness. Well, thankfully I don't think it was. So tested. But Yeah, man. Would you ever imagine that it would turn to this? I mean, I guess everybody's still kind of in shock, you know?
Right. You know, I think I'm pretty sure I had it November of 2019, late
Yeah.
November of 2019. I was sick for about a week, and like I didn't leave the couch. You know what I mean? Like,
A week is pretty good. You probably did have it. Like I had it for a day. I'm like, yeah, maybe I just had a head cold. A week, you might have had the Rona. Yeah.
yeah. But since then,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Solid, bro. I'm solid. Yeah.
You know, I've had several tests, and each time it's come back negative, so I'm good.
I remember 25 years ago. Remember the original spot with Gilgamesh? Remember that?
Yeah.
Nice. Good fun.
Yeah.
I remember doing seminars in that place. That was good fun.
I still have a lot of the my t-shirts from that.
Do
you know,
really?
and every once in a while, yeah, I do. And people will see them and like, well, where do I get that? And I'm like,
yeah.
You know, part of a secret club, secret organization.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. All my old timers do that all the time with my old logo. They're like, we gotta make sure every time I make shirts with the old logo, they go like that, you know.
Yeah.
The old logo stuff. Yeah. That's
awesome. So what's your typical day at the academy now?
Well, we have, classes in the morning, at night, and we have our kids' classes first. Morning classes now, it's adults, that type of thing. We'll have some strength and conditioning classes early in the morning. Lee will go in, 5 or 6 a.m., do some sparring classes, and then we'll have typically each day but a Friday and a Tuesday. Most mornings we have one Muay Thai class. That's the more popular class in the morning. Mm-hmm. Then we'll start off, and I'll come in, and then a lot of my guys are already there, cleaning up, getting ready for classes. We'll have kids classes and teen classes starting at like 4 till about 6, depending on the day, 6:30. That's when adult classes kick in, and that's when we'll also have because like I said, we've grown, in the past. We moved into a new spot about 4 years ago, maybe 5.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, about 4 years. So now we got a lot of space. So we'll have multiple classes going all the time. So typically around that time, it's class time, we'll have like a strength conditioning class going on one side, and then the Muay Thai class will start, and jiu-jitsu, and it alternates, gi and no gi. Mm-hmm. And we typically go at about 8:30, 9 o'clock, depending each day. And it's pretty, it's hectic in there. It's hectic. We got a lot of people coming back in to train, which has been exciting to see, both adults and kids, all ages and stages. And of course, we got all those COVID protocols without going through all that. But that's typically what we're doing. And then we have classes on Saturday morning. We wrap it up in the afternoon. We have a couple nights, we have a night a week where we have just the fighters only training. At gi, no gi. I got my professor, Fernando Sarmento Jr. He teaches our gi class on Mondays and Wednesdays. Does his no gi on Thursday. Mm-hmm. So, we got a big eclectic curriculum going on. You know what I mean? It's from the IMB. Nice. You know that. So it's we've been pretty busy, thankfully. That happens to be this week. That's why it worked out a great time for us to set this up. We're closed for spring break, a little recharge for everybody.
Nice.
So it's the perfect time. I don't have to worry about rushing to get out of here to get back to the school or anything. Got plenty of time.
Awesome.
Without having to rush. So, yeah.
What's your favorite thing to teach?
That's a good question. I would definitely say it changes.
Okay.
I'm trying to cop out for the question. So sometimes you get in a kick where, best example would be gi. Sometimes you're just doing tons of gi and you're just like, I've got some wild stuff we want to go over and doing that. And that kind of gets in your groove. And then I'm like, you know what? I feel like punching somebody. So it's like, the Muay Thai kicks in. We got some cool things we got to do. You got a guy fighting in Thai or something. So you kind of get in that groove. So I love teaching all of it. We have our kids classes also. I like doing both. So I would definitely say it goes in waves. I think that's healthy. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's healthy. Like you and I are fortunate in the sense that, 30 years ago, whatever it's been, that we met Richard Still, and we've been taught from day one to cover the ranges of combat, and he always said, if you can't spar it, don't train it. You know what I mean? And
right.
Like I lived and died by those two statements. He's like, if you can't spar it, don't train it, and stay in shape. I said, yes, sir. I mean, so my point is, we've always loved teaching the various martial arts, college. Sure. It's like we enjoy it, so that kind of allows me to keep the brain fresh and keep the energy fresh. Because there's burnout sometimes if you only teaching one class type 6 days a week.
Oh yeah,
anybody would experience burnout. So by mixing it up a little bit, by having the ability to do so, helps kind of keeps the juices flowing and moving forward.
Sure.
Loving martial arts, that's where it starts. And,
right.
I think but those other options, it makes it having this ability to teach all those options because of all the years of training those things. I think that gives us a lot of that recharge all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree, because like I'll be in a mindset where, you know what, I'm just in love with boxing, and that'll go on for about 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And then one day I'll see a video, especially now with social media, I'll see someone doing something on Instagram, and it might be Muay Thai, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna do some Muay Thai today, guys. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. For me, like Muay Thai specific, but all right, I get the same group of boxing for like a month, and I have a general curriculum laid out. My guys, like if I'm not teaching the class, they'll go by it. But I give them relative freedom. I always say, like, try to stick to what I laid out for you 80%, and then you can fluctuate. Sure. And I'll say, but I'll have it rough. I'm like, okay, guys, we're gonna work on clinch work this week. And if I'm teaching it, I get a lot of freedom, kind of go crazy. Next, I've been doing clinch work for 2 weeks because I was getting into it. I'm like, wait a minute, I got to go back to some boxing. Same thing. You get into it for a while. I'm like, wait, you forgot about, let's do some crazy kicks, different types of kicks. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. Or we're doing arm bars, though. Now we're attacking the legs. We're doing this. Or we're doing throws for a month. You ready? People are like, oh.
Right.
So, yeah, that's part of the love of martial arts,
Do you run into this where you've got students who just want to do I just want to do Muay Thai. I just want to box. Yeah, I just love jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, this is a great question because back in the day, I'm sure you're probably like me. I was like, well, no, you're doing all of it. I'm like, because my mindset was, you need to prepare. I go, my job as an instructor, everyone comes to me with different things, is to make sure your ability to defend yourself. There's a common thing. Some people come to me and say they want to lose weight. I want to do this. I want to do that. Okay, great. But there's a common theme to martial arts. You expect the ability to defend yourself, right? I don't care what you come in for. In order to do that, you got to have some functionality in all the rings of combat. But that being said, I realized I was forcing people to do things that they may not necessarily be comfortable with.
Sure.
So I've kind of matured that over the years. Say, hey, listen, I would recommend doing all of it. Right. But I do have plenty of people that only do Thai boxing with nothing to do with jiu-jitsu, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I have plenty of that. But I would say, I have to really look at the numbers per se, but I would say 60 to 70% do all of it. Now, do they have a favorite? Yeah, it's pretty good. They all have a favorite. I tell them all the time, I go, listen, it's great to have a favorite. Everyone's going to have that. But don't ignore the other one. You know what I mean?
Right.
So listen, if you're coming to class 3 days a week, make sure you 2 classes do a week that are your favorite, and then one, make sure you're covering the other one. Because and I always use the example of self-defense. I'm like, you don't want to fall on the ground and be like a turtle on your back. You don't know any jiu-jitsu. And for I'm like, you don't know what it's not like to get punched in the face and have a good reaction.
Sure.
So, and most times, just like anything else, you know the deal. When people first start, I try to get them to do both right off the start. Why? Because if you do, let's say, Muay Thai for 2 years, 3 years, you become proficient and you enjoy the art. To start jiu-jitsu, then people in their own minds are like, they don't like the feel of becoming a quote unquote white belt again, like a complete beginner. Like, I don't like, no, because I went through this stage already. I don't like it. And they're like, it's not working. I'm like, no, it's just you. So I tell them in the beginning, you're uncomfortable already. Let's just be uncomfortable in everything.
Yeah.
Why not? Right? They're starting from the beginning, starting from zero anyway. So let's start from zero from everything. And a year from now, you're going to be thanking me, that you covered all of this. You're out of that uncomfortable beginner stage.
Sure.
Forward. But again, I don't force it. I used to be grouchy. I got, I guess, a little more wiser, maybe older and grouchy. If you ask my wife, she's going to say grouchy, but
right.
But I've definitely come a little bit wiser at that. Let people do what they want to do. Now, I definitely recommend it. I mean, I'm sure you probably found the same thing. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we have the same thing. Although I might this is a weird way of approaching this demographic thing. So the students, okay, my standout jujitsu students, they just do jujitsu.
Right.
But my well-rounded guys, they're just well balanced. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, they might be, like purple belt level jujitsu, but everything else they're really good with.
Right.
I've got some black belts, but right now they're just black belts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just jujitsu black belts. They're not cross-trained in striking or weapons, you know?
Yeah.
So
I just kind of accepted it. So it's like, okay. I kind of realized, like, being an instructor for as long as we've done it, and any school owner will tell you the same thing, like trying to make everybody else love every martial art like you do is kind of futile. So it's like we're in that 2%, 3% that enjoy it that much, that love doing all of it and do all of it. And just because they don't want to do it doesn't make it wrong. You can recommend it. So it's like, okay, that's cool. And hopefully it's mostly trying to pass on the love of martial arts to all of them. This, you know what I mean? And then so I'm like, well, you know what? I don't want to do stick work. I'm like, okay. And you're like, why not? It's awesome. You know what I mean? And they're like, all right, that's just me. All right, what do you want to do? And some people don't have the time. We're like, what do you mean you don't have time? You can't train 6 days a week? You're like, I got a job. I got kids. All right, well, let's get 2 solid days a week out of you and pick whatever you want. You know?
Right.
And hopefully over time, which has happened plenty of times, people change their mind and kind of weave in and out of the other classes and at least get some type of functionality, you know?
Sure. Yeah. So here's a question. I'm going to word it a little different. I'm going to tell you what I do, but I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
Sure.
So if someone comes to me for self-defense, right, and they start training, I try to get them to train everything because it's self-defense.
Sure. And
I'll sit there, and as soon as, like, you get a flyer for a tournament or something, I say, I want you to do this. And like, what? But Chris, I don't want to be a fighter. It's like, I got it. I don't want you to be a fighter. You don't want to be a fighter. I don't want you to be a fighter.
Right.
But this, especially with jujitsu, is like the easiest way to pressure test, or at least get pressure tested.
Yeah.
And it's safe.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've got guys fighting all the time, but how do you feel about recommending fighting as a way of tightening up your self-defense routine?
I agree with exactly what you're saying. And what'll happen is like, I agree, jiu-jitsu is probably the best space because it's easiest you can quickly get into. Because just like in the classroom, you can quickly go to sparring, live rolling faster than you can for Muay Thai. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I want to spar every day. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. I'm like,
no, you don't.
Things you've never sparred. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, but
sure.
But I would agree. I would agree to that, especially, and it's definitely a person by person thing. I definitely don't. I don't push as much as I used to. Put it that way, because if I think they can handle the pressure, or I want to press them, yeah, I absolutely will. Specifically, age and stage we're talking about here, right? So, some young guy or girl, that doesn't have, has regular commitments of school and work, that's fine. And I always tell them this. I'm like, you're going to regret when you get to your late 30s and 40s if you didn't take this opportunity to do one grappling turn, just one.
Right.
You're going to regret it.
Yeah.
And so when you do it, I always, specifically guys, I give guys that'll do that. And then let's say, I've had plenty of guys that only want to do one MMA fight, an amateur fight. I said, cool, let's go, let's get ready. And that's all ages. I've had guys in the 30s and 40s, and I think I want to do them. I'm like, all right, let's do it, man, and get serious with them and push it. And when the fight's over, win or loss, I always tell them the same thing. I say, hey, man, welcome to the 1%. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're the 1% that actually went out and fought and actually competed. I'm like, I'm like, that's rare. You know what I mean? Most people are sitting on the couch and saying, I would do this. Like, you ever watch fights and somebody's like, why does he just get up? Like, you want to take your water bottle and chuck him in the head.
Right.
You can't just get up. You know what I mean? It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So the point is like, you're the one that actually took the chance and took the risk. And the best example, I don't know if you remember this commercial or not. I use it all the time whenever we talk about this topic. There was an old commercial where there's this, not that old, maybe 10 years old. And there's a grandfather sitting on the porch, and he's sitting on his rocking chair, and sitting in front of him on the floor with the legs all crossed are a bunch of his grandkids. There's like 5 or 6 of them. And the grandfather's explaining in detail this motorcycle. It's a Harley. And he's breaking all the details down, and the kids are like, oh, their eyes are wide. He's like cranking up, and he's explaining to it. The kids' minds are like blown, you know what I mean? And then when he gets done describing it, the kids go, Grandpa, I never knew you owned a Harley. And the grandpa goes, I didn't. Your grandmother made me spend the money on siding. And all the kids go, let's go help the grandma. And they get up and walk away. So I tell the same story. I go, what's going to be your story? I trained and all this, whatever. I'm like, did you fight or compete? Like, no, I was too busy doing God knows what. I'm like, get the one in, you know what I mean? And one in, and you never know. Maybe you're going to do more. Maybe you don't. Maybe you decide it's not for you. You know what I mean? But at least you can go to bed with that. Like, hey, man, I went out there, you know?
Yeah.
It's definitely my person thing, you know?
Yeah. And you know, it changes too. You know, they say that you do a fight and it doesn't happen immediately, but say a week, maybe 2 weeks, a month tops, your knowledge has advanced maybe like a year.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. You know,
I agree.
It's just, and there's no substitute for that.
No. Yeah. Especially now, like, I know we sound like 2 old men when we talk about this, but it wasn't like this back in our day. Like back when we were fighting, you know what I mean? That's like, I always use the example. One of mine was Big Dan Mergliata had fights, and you call them, you know, special grappling matches because it wasn't legal. You know, it was just like you would get there. And I remember one of my fights, you're sitting there beside a guy. We all sit down, and he's like, okay, what do you weigh? What do you weigh? He's like, okay. It's me and a guy happened to be sitting beside me. You two were close enough. You guys have first fight, 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, shake hands, go in the back, warm up. In a middle school where they didn't have the janitor didn't turn the lights on in the locker room, so we're warming up in the dark.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, guys, now it's so set up so well. You know what I mean? At least in Jersey. I'm sure Connecticut is too. I'm not sure about Connecticut, but Jersey set up so well for amateur and fights and competition, whether it's jiu-jitsu or Thai boxing or MMA or whatever. And it's just, you know, blood tests and good refereeing and good judging and all that stuff. It's like it's all laid out for you. So that's why I always kind of say, you know, give it a shot, you know, give it a shot. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody. Again, it's a small percentage we're talking about. But for those who are pushing it, like you said, on the mat, you could see it. You could smell it. Like, ooh, that person, he's got a little competition in him. He's got a little spark in him. Like, I want you to do it. Like, I never thought about that. I'm like, I know, but what I'm seeing from a coach, I'm sure you've seen it. You're just like, you need to get out there and give it a shot. You know? Yeah, it's fun. From a coaching perspective, it's fun.
It's great. You know, I came from an amateur boxing background, and like it had a little bit more structure, a lot more structure than
boxing,
MMA scene.
Oh my God, yeah.
When they were rolling this sport out, I can remember like they were sometimes making up the rules as they went.
Oh yeah, both of my fights. So, you want to do elbows? No elbows. Kicks to the head? No kicks to the head. Some of my fights had gloves. One of my fights had no gloves. Like, you want to wear gloves? Like, no, you want to wear gloves? No, we didn't wear gloves. It's like, right? You know what I mean? Like, guys wouldn't believe me, but I have a picture one of the pictures on the sidewall, and one of my boys, Liam, always brings that up sometimes to be doing seminar stuff. You see that picture over there? See Chloe's not wearing gloves. I'm like, I don't know. It's just the way it was back then, right?
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. It was, you know, I can remember, and I don't like throwing people under the bus, but I will say this. I remember we had someone fight in a state that I will not say, but this particular state, but it wasn't Connecticut. It was not Connecticut. It was nowhere in Connecticut, and Jersey is safe too. Everywhere else, you got to figure it out. But we're fighting.
48 more to go.
Yeah, out of state. And I'm like, I'm starting to get concerned because the weigh-in process is happening, all the stuff is getting signed, and I'm like, listen, I'm not licensed yet for this state, as a second,
Yeah.
or even as a coach. They're like, don't worry about it. Right, but if this matters, I need to be cage side. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we'll take care of it. So it's the clock's ticking. The day of the fight, like probably about 2 hours before the fight, they're like, "Where's your license?" I told you I don't have one. I told you I've been trying to get one. They go, "All right, do this. Take down this email address." I'm like, "Okay, what am I supposed to do with this?" Go get your cell phone, go into the bathroom, take a picture of yourself, and email us. Uh, Basically, email us your qualifications and who you're coaching. I'm like, no, what do I really? What do you really want me to do? They're like, no, do that. Go in the bathroom, take a picture. Whatever.
It's come a long way, really. It really has
Yeah.
come a long way. I remember the first show commission showed up, and I was fighting, and my boy Big Tom was fighting. I'm like, who's this? What are these guys doing? A bunch of suits walking around, like making demands. I'm like, what the hell is this? Dude, we're gonna fight. What are we doing? You know what I mean?
Oh my god. Oh, jeez. Like it's.
Now I'm like, it's so laid out now. Just go fight and experience it.
Yeah.
Even jiu-jitsu, you mentioned in the first place. Compete. There's so many things. Remember back in the days doing just nagas, there's whoever showed up, whoever showed up. And now
right.
It's like, there's a million divisions, whether it's jiu-jitsu tournaments or whatever. There's just a million tournaments and options, So
it's great. You run a tournament.
Yes, sir. Me and a couple of other guys, my jiu-jitsu instructor and Jared Baggio, we run our New Jersey Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. And what we do with that is we have 4 events a year. Obviously, COVID kind of put a stop to that, but hopefully we're getting started up soon. But it's been a great opportunity for our guys. Same thing like you mentioned. Like, I think I might want to do one tournament. Beautiful. It's IBJJF rules. Tournament safe, same rules, all jiu-jitsu schools, and gives them a chance to experience that. So that's been going well, too. We've been doing that for, I would say at least 10 years. I got to take a look. I think more, actually.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I think 12.
I want to say about 12. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
It's about 12, I think, if I'm roughing it. But yeah, I mean, obviously the last one we had was right before the COVID shutdown. It was literally like, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks before the COVID shutdown. And then we're looking to have one soon. Actually, we're just getting venues that are opening up to have it. We're ready, but you got to have venues that are willing to have enough people that you can pull off enough people, and you got to rotate guys in and out, and there's a whole thing to it. But yeah, I love doing that too because it's a traditional jiu-jitsu approach to it. We have gi and no gi, but that's the rules we go by. All the referees are jiu-jitsu black belts, all IBJJF certified. So it's been a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I love your events. Events.
You ref a bunch of them, yeah. We've had a lot of celebrity refs besides yourselves too. Guys come in and out of there, so it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Good time. Yeah. Plus, you can hear your chops from the side.
Right. So most of your daughter's even done a couple, right?
Yes, my youngest has. Yeah, she's 11 now. She hasn't done one in a little while. She wanted to do one, but I wouldn't let her. She wasn't training enough, and it wasn't from a lack of want. She's just one of those kids that she's like, okay, I'm in. She started basketball like 3 years ago. And like a year into it, she started doing like travel. Never played basketball, but she's just a naturally athletic kid. So, and then she got on a AA team. So
wow.
She's doing that. Plus, she likes playing soccer. She's doing MMA. She's doing jiu-jitsu. I'm like, all right, kid. She's like, jiu-jitsu tournament coming. I'm like, you roll, but not tournament ready type thing.
Sure.
So see if we can get her back on track. How about your daughter out there tearing it up?
Yeah. She's a brown belt now. She's a nurse now. So she finished nursing school and she's worked through the entire pandemic, which is both cool but a little scary
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
and she works like a fiend, which I think is awesome. I gotta tell you, I want her to take a step back for one reason only, because I would love to one day tie a black belt around her waist.
Of course.
She's not getting one. She won't be given one. She's gonna basically have to take it out of my hand.
My cold dead hand.
Right. But I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate. I've promoted a lot of people. Not a lot, but I've promoted 1, 2, 5 black belts so far.
Yes.
And I would really be psyched to one day say,
yeah,
that's as homegrown as it gets.
Yeah, you can't get more homegrown than that. Right? I know Jerry with his daughter Melissa, who's Liam's wife now, and Fernando gave his black belt, so that was always cool to see. Because we obviously known her since she was a little girl, so it's been cool to see. And obviously Liam too, with her one of her other black belts, so same type of thing. It's cool to see the homegrown from day one type thing. Yeah,
it is. But it'll happen. She's one day she's gonna realize that saving lives and helping people improve their quality of living, while it's rewarding, one day she's gonna try to accidentally choke somebody, and then she's gonna realize that she's got all this pent up aggression. And it's time to do something good to it.
Be like,
yeah.
So,
that's yeah. So there's that. Here's a question. So, and it'll start to bring us into some of the other stuff. But what do you say to the guy who is completely misguided with what it takes to fight?
Now, were you saying a guy that just walked in the door, or a guy that's been training with me for a while?
Let's do both.
Okay. So the guy walking in the door, he's never trained before. He's trained a little bit. We've had plenty of these guys. I need to do this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, okay, and I'll try to guide them. Like, listen, why don't we just take class first? I want to fight. Like, all right, let's get on the mat first. Let's go with that. And if they manage to do that, then that kind of usually balances itself out real quick.
Sure.
You realize you can't jump rope for 5 minutes, can't do exercises, can't hit pads right. You know what I mean? Like, all right, you have a long way to go. And I try to be nice and respectful and try to guide them, because typically most people are pretty nice. Do you get wacky people that, I don't want to do that, I want to do this? I always say, listen, you're coming to me and you're coming to the chef and asking how to cook a meal. I'm telling you how to do it. And you're saying, no, this is the other way. This is how you do it. I'm like, well, why are you asking me? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because after a while, then I get annoyed. I'm definitely getting old grouchy. Because after a while, I'm just like, why are you here then? Why are you asking me? If you already know, why do you need me?
Right.
Well, I don't know. But then empty your glass and pay attention. And problem is, people think their glass is full when it's not even close to.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now the guys that train with me that have been a while and they're talking about fighting and they're not quite ready yet, or they have a misconception. I would say first just take class, regular class. When they start getting better and they talk about fighting, we have a fighters only class.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of your christening. You know what I mean? Like, okay, show me you can survive that class before you even think about it. And if you can show me you can survive that class, then we'll go from there. Because in that class, I have all ranges of guys who want to fight, guys that have fought one amateur fight, guys that fought an amateur fight, a ton of grappling matches, are working on this or that. And I got guys who are ex-pros that don't fight anymore but love training like that. You know what I mean? So they come in. If it's your first time coming in, guys know, like, this is fight class. So if you're coming to train, this class is brutal. You know what I mean? By design, because you got to survive that first. Always tell them, as we all know this, every fighter knows this, and this is not rocket science. It's like the training is harder than the fight. You know what I mean? It's like you can get through the training, then we can have the fight. That's kind of like guide them through. I try not to smash people's hopes or something. Like, you're a mess. You can't do it. I don't want to do that. So it's like, come take class. You know what I mean? And if you listen and you learn, I'm like, listen, I don't I don't pretend to be some super coach that knows every answer, but we're going to figure out these answers together. But you got to be coachable. You got to be coachable. If you're not coachable,
right,
then you're going to have a long, hard trail, my friend. You know what I mean? Not
sure,
here, me, but everywhere. You got to be coachable. You know.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I imagine. What approach do you take?
Very similar, very similar. I might be a bit grouchier. Um, but the same thing. It's like, listen, why don't we take class first, and I'll point out the certain things. So it's like, look it, you want to fight, you can't even jump rope for 3 minutes. Look it, you want to fight, you're gasping and you won't even stand up, and the round is barely halfway through. That kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I point out the obvious. Like, you're punching like a wild person, right? Your hands are down. It's like,
yeah. And then with the ones that have ability, they've been training for a bit, I tell them, all right, you're going to have to really work on your conditioning. And most of the time they're fine with that. But I tell them, as important as it is to, be fit, be strong, be well conditioned, don't stop learning. Don't stop learning. Because you'll see guys, they've had a couple of fights, 4 fights, 5 fights, and they've got a good grasp of how things work. But now they start repeating the same formula. And it's like, you probably should try to be an improved version of the guy who fought last time. Like how you were saying at the beginning, as growth.
Yeah. Yeah. You always say, what bucket of yours is at most empty that you can get the quickest results by filling? If that bucket is your wrestling or your boxing, or your conditioning. Well, if you spend a little bit of time, you'll get the quickest results from that because that's your emptiest bucket. You know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, again, you got to be coachable. You got to be willing to listen.
Yeah.
Oh, it is what it is.
New Jersey's a wrestling state. Do you get a lot of wrestlers?
We have wrestlers, yeah, absolutely. There's so many wrestlers around now. You know what I mean? We have plenty of wrestlers in our program. A lot of schools that have guys that come from wrestling will have more wrestlers than most because they obviously relate to that. Like, oh, so-and-so was a wrestler for X, Y, or Z or whatever, so they'll go to that. But yeah, there's wrestling's big in New Jersey. Big.
Yeah. In Connecticut, we have a lot of striking. I mean, we have a lot of jujitsu, but Connecticut's not a wrestling state. You know what I mean? There's, not in the same sense as New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, not every high school has a wrestling program. Not every college has a wrestling program. There are wrestling programs and some really solid ones in Connecticut, but it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. Like, like my high school did not have a wrestling program.
Right.
But, like some of the better programs, like, Newington has a program. And then some of the high schools recently started doing one-man teams, which I'd never heard of that before. So
I've never heard that before either.
Yeah. So like, say, for instance, in my case, like my high school originally did not have a team.
Right.
Now what you can do is, if I wanted to, I could say, all right, I'm going to be a one-man team. I will train with this school, but when I compete, I'm only representing my school.
Wow, I never heard that before. Interesting.
Yeah. So I mean,
guys just trying to kickstart programs in high school, essentially. I mean,
right. So that's cool. I think, and again, coming from a primarily striking background at first,
right?
I think wrestling's awesome for MMA and especially jiu-jitsu, but for MMA, like they live in both worlds. You know what I mean? Like, they live on their feet. They're great at taking down, and they know how to maintain top position. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, wrestling, amazing.
Yeah.
Wrestlers. I have a lot of guys that are wrestlers.
Yeah.
I started striking first too originally. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What was because I mean I have watched or been next to you for learning a lot of this stuff, either with
Sure.
Seagung or with Crew Phil or whatever. What was what led you to Cabeza? Let's talk about that.
Well, it's a good question. So Fernando, we say Cabeza is his nickname for Fernando Soto Jr. is our jiu-jitsu instructor. Um, at the time, this is do the math on this. I think 2001. I want to say it's for about 20 years of them. I think maybe 2002. I was obviously we started with catch wrestling, right? So I started with catch wrestling, and then I used to go to in the 90s. We had Middletown was Craig Kukoc and Henzo. They would come down to a gym in Middletown. So they had a gym in Middletown where on Wednesdays and Sundays they would have training, all no gi. So I would do that, and then every once in a while I would go to the city to train in his place. And there's various places at the time. I remember the third floor where there was a methadone clinic under it. There's some shady characters walking around while you're waiting for classes to start. But I really, at that point, I wanted to get a gi program going, and I wanted to do gi. And a lot of times the morning classes were a lot of no gi, which is fine. That's my original thing. I love that. But I really wanted to train some no gi, and I wanted to get my jiu-jitsu black belt. So it happened to be I went to a seminar for Sifu, and he was at Don Edwards' place. Remember Don? Right?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I guess Fernando had been there just a little bit, and he was teaching off and on here there, and he happened to come in because he wanted to see and meet Sifu, and so he came in for the grappling part. And then Sifu, he was open-minded, like, hey, we got a jiu-jitsu black belt from Brazil. Come on the mat and show some stuff. So he came on out and showed some crazy stuff. I was like, oh, it's pretty good, So then I talked to him after, hey, what about coming down and doing a seminar at my school for jiu-jitsu? He's like, yeah, absolutely. And I was I wanted to see how he taught, how he interacted with students. I didn't realize it was like a job interview almost, because I'm watching. Because, the deal, you're particular with students. You're students. You don't want to just bring anybody in.
Sure.
You want to make sure it works, And he came in and did a seminar. I loved it, all his stuff. And then I talked to him, like, all right, what days are you available? You know what I mean? And at the time, I think he was only teaching there. It's got to be 20 years now. I got to check with him. But so we had a couple open dates. So I said, all right, why don't we do these 2 days a week? You're going to come in. And here we are 20 years later. I'm, I have my second degree with him. And he's promoted some of my guys to black belt, John and Liam, and it just keeps going. But and it just worked out great for me. In my mind says, okay, instead of me traveling to find the black belts, I'll bring the black belt to me.
Right.
You're teaching 6 days a week, and it's crazy,
Oh, yeah.
What's easier? You come to me. We'll do this. Works out great. And in the beginning, it was wild. So what will happen was we joke about it to this day. So he would take the train because he didn't have his license yet. He was fresh from Brazil. So he'd take the train from the city. He would go into Point Pleasant. Ascari would pick him up, right? He'd have a class in Ascari's basement. I'd go take the class for an hour and a half. We'd roll. And then I'd drive him to my place, right? We would do an hour private in the ring, just him and I, while my guys were teaching another class. And then he would stay and teach the other class. And we did that for, I don't know, it's got to be 2 years or something like that. You know what I mean? In the beginning, I just wanted to, like I said, we had done no-gi forever, competing in tournaments, and everybody was doing great, but I knew we could do better. And so I kind of wanted to catch up what he wanted as a fundamental start for white belt.
Sure.
So we really crash coursed it for 2 years, and then I've been doing it ever since, And now
Wow.
he does the same thing, teaches 2 gi classes a week and 1 no gi class for me. So yeah, and then from there, once he did well with my school, the first couple months, buddies of mine, Jerry, a guy named Bob Meyer, BJ Ganguly, some of these other guys were like, hey, could he come teach at my place? And then slowly but surely, he's gone to everyone's place, and now he kind of just rotates around. And it's good
That's
for
awesome.
him. He just teaches jujitsu. He doesn't have to worry about the business end of that part. We take care of that. And he just comes in and teaches jujitsu. And it's a win-win for everybody. Especially like you say, we avoid burnout. So it's 2 classes a week where I can just roll with, train and do my thing. Now, obviously I'm helping out people too, but
Right.
allows me to kind of disconnect for the hour and just learn. And it's twice a week. And it gives me that opportunity.
Yeah. You talked about the traveling. So I can remember like in the 90s, I would meet Tom Herlihy at his, so I would drive from my house to his place, and he lived like 45 minutes away from me. Then we would jump in his car and we would drive into the city. I would do an hour, sometimes an hour and a half with crew. And then we would go to Jersey City and train with Guru Don Cuesta. And we would do that twice a week. And now I think about it, I'm like, what the hell?
Tell guys all the time, you're spoiled rotten. You have all this great stuff under one roof. You know what I mean? Like, dude, the traveling we used to have to do to get good training was amazing. Yeah. Don Quest, I haven't heard his name in forever. Yeah, hope he's doing well. I have no idea.
I communicated with him probably about a year ago, and he was doing all right. The last time we spoke, he was doing massage therapy on the side. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, and he was really active in the church.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Here's a guy who has beaten the snot out of me with a stick, and I'm like, "What are you going? You're going to church?" Yeah. I mean, that is a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, dude, you hit me with a stick.
Like, bad profile. What are you talking about? Like, have you told them the stuff you've done? Like,
yeah, right.
I used to drive up to his place and get. I used to drive up to his place and get sticks, and he always had the best wooden, like the training daggers and stuff like that. He always had a ton of it, so I used to go up there and stock up like once a year. Crazy.
And then in Crew Phil, I had a lot of fun training with him. I miss it. My body does not miss it. My brain misses it.
Sure.
Like my knees don't miss it. My ribs don't miss it.
Froggies. I remember one time me and Wellington training there. And this was when he was at Dave Barton's gym.
Wow. Yeah.
And I guess they were doing construction on the floor we normally work out. So they had all of us upstairs on this other floor. And the wooden floor, you can tell, was used for storage or something. So, like, it wasn't like a flat wooden floor. It was like the Grand Canyon of floors of wood. And you're just, like, training and sweating and dying. And then in the middle of doing pad work, Wellington stops, like, oh. He puts his foot up and he pulls out, like, it looked like a damn prison shank, like this long, a wood shank that went up to his foot. It's like oh. It's funny. Good times. Yeah. That was good. I remember coming out of there one time we were training, and it was at Kamudi, AJ, one of those guys one day, and it was like a clinch sparring class, and Phil was doing it too. And me and Wellington crawled out of there, and like I didn't even know how we got home. So like we're both like leaning over just from getting kneed a million times. And so he was like, "You got to drive." So I'm driving. We're both like, it looked like Night at the Roxbury, but we weren't going the other way. We're just leaning one way.
Yeah.
Good times.
It was great times. The first time I did a private lesson with him, the very first time, right? I brought 2 friends of mine with me, right? And one of them trained and the other one just hung out, you know what I mean? So I do this private lesson and I overhear them. So the lesson ends because I wanted to do specifically clinch work. And so I'm clinch sparring with Crew Phil, and I hear one of my buddies go, "Wow, this guy would beat the shit out of Chris, wouldn't he?" I'm like, thanks, guys. I mean, it's true, but like, you don't gotta talk about it.
Any other encouraging words you want to share? Like,
yeah,
no shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's funny.
yeah, yeah. And then I remember, his conditioning, like he can get you into shape.
Yeah, second to none. Yeah.
I remember one time we're training, and it might have been push-ups, and I mean, I must have moved the earth about 1,000 times. And he looks at me and goes, "You tired?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "So just quit," and just walked away. And I'm like, ah. So here I am
doing. That's some Yoda Jedi stuff right there. Like, yeah. All right, like I know what you're doing there.
Yeah, yeah. So you're right, though, man. We went all over, and these guys don't, which is awesome for them. I mean, you've got the gym that I wanted to go to. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to go to a place that had everything. I just gotta show up. That's it. Just show up.
Show up.
Yeah, I'd never leave.
It's like, it's weird. It's such a short period of time, right? Like, and we joke that we're old or whatever, but we ain't old. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's such a short period of time how the martial arts, in terms of access and availability to do so many things and get with so many great trainers in such a short period of time. It's like, it's almost like in the same world from just 25 years ago. It's like, it's shocking, right? Like you said, we had to travel and no internet. And that really sounds old, but it's like, maybe there was probably an internet, but we sure didn't have it. In 95, when I opened up, I was like, it wasn't happening. But it's shocking. Sometimes I think it's like technology moving so quickly in such a short period of time. It's the same thing.
Sure.
Sometimes it bugs me out a little bit. You're like, wow, this is just amazing. That's great. You know what I mean? But it's amazing in such a short period of time.
You know, as a coach, it's been awesome because, like, there was no fight film. I mean, there would be fight film, but you weren't getting your hands on it.
No.
Now you got a student fighting somebody.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube somewhere.
You want to be the best example of that? Well, I forget which one of my guys was fighting, but he fought a guy, and the guy was, they said, he was either 1-0 or 1 had one fight in Costa Rica. The guy was from Costa Rica, right? I swear to God, I found this fight on YouTube. I found it, and like it was amazing. I couldn't believe I did it. But the cage was, if the cage was 10 feet, I'm exaggerating. Like it was like somebody had made a home cage, and like they could literally, I swear to God, if they both grabbed the cage wall and leaned, they could touch it. That's how close it was. I'm looking, I go, what the hell is this? But I found it, fight video, you know what I mean? I'm like, all right, let's watch this, you know what I mean? But like back in the day, you're not watching it. Fight video. Yeah, you're right. Nothing.
Yeah. So it's awesome, you know what I mean? Like that's just invaluable. We didn't have access to that. That was a game changer. The way, like, it's all moved so fast.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah.
And at the pro level, you know what I mean? Please, it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there. Yeah, you can watch everything. Yeah, it's on another planet. It's insane. It's such a great benefit for everybody.
Yeah. So I noticed the background there looks like a nice hotel room.
Yes, I am at Mohegan Sun. Quarantining for the 1 millionth time this past year. We got Bellator tomorrow. So I got my test results already back. I'm negative. I'm good. I counted how many times I've tested. I think it's up to 50 now for this past year. Yeah, I think I just hit the 50 mark. Stopped counting about 50. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
That is.
I've been fortunate to be working in this, what's going on this past year. So that's crazy, right? Yeah. So I got this nice room. Mohegan always has great rooms. Mike Mazzulli always takes care of us. Always got
right on.
Yeah. Can't complain.
So, how'd you get started?
For MMA judging in New Jersey, when when the rules first got sanctioned there, we all know that history and all that. They were obviously, I had guys fighting already, and I was fighting too. And then I had stopped fighting after my 5th fight, and because it just didn't make any sense. If I was coming up, I was going to be almost 30, and had my school already, and I was engaged to get married, and you're still paying $35 to register to fight, making $5 a ticket. You know what I mean? It didn't make any sense at this point. As much as I loved it, I said, all right, you know what? Let me just focus on my school and get ready to move on to the next stage in terms of my own life. So the athletic commission had approached me. It's like, hey, you want to be an inspector? I said, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll come out by. And I think I did a couple of shows as an inspector. I don't remember how many. I'd have to ask. I'd have to ask them. And then they asked me to go on as a judge because they were trying to build a team of officials. You know what I mean? They had at the time referees. They had Dan Merliata. They had Kevin Mulhall. So they needed some judges. You know what I mean? They needed some judges. And so they asked me to go from inspecting to judging. And it's been a fun ride ever since. It's been a fun ride. And that was, I'd have to go back and look. I think my first, I don't remember, we've done a boatload of local shows, obviously, to kind of to build your craft, But like my first UFC was 70, whatever number it is, with Rashad Evans and Michael Bisping. I want to say it's 77, 73, something like that. Yeah, so that was my first big show. Obviously, before then, we did, Ring of Combat and all the local shows, and you kind of you get your chops going through there, and then get the shot at the big one, and you hope you don't mess up, and you kind of go forward from there. But yeah, that's what got me started. And of course, we love martial arts, right? It's our life, right? This is part of your podcast, right? Chasing the Dragon, just it's a martial arts lifestyle. So, my thought process was pretty simple too. I'm like, yeah, can I help? Absolutely. I want to help this sport grow because this is the sport that I love. And I didn't want to see anybody who was unqualified trying to figure it out. I didn't want fighters having to deal with that because I know what it feels like to win and I know what it feels like to lose. And put that in the hands of somebody that their intentions might be well, but if they weren't qualified to do it at the time, at the time it was chaos, in terms of people knowing what to do, So that's how that came about. And I've been, thank God, knock on wood, very fortunate to have continued to do it.
I watch the sport as much as probably everybody, maybe more than some. And so I always listen for your name. I always do, and it's reassuring knowing that somebody who, so I know I'm in the know, you're in the know. A lot of people don't realize that, like, yeah, there are some judges who might just be fans of a sport.
Right.
But you've lived it, struggled to learn it, fought and clawed to learn it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know the sport more than some of these guys fighting.
Well, I just think of it this way, like, there are perceptions about judging, like, oh, this person is not qualified. I've been called, and other first boxing judges. Well, I've never judged a boxing fight in my life. I've done Thai boxing, but every judge that I know, that I work with, and I'm fortunate, I get to work with the top guys in the world. I really am. Every one of them is a lifelong martial artist. Every one of them, Now, some guys, and just because of that, on a note to that, just because guys are involved in our particular arts doesn't make them a good judge. You know what I mean? It's a starting point. It's a good starting point. But I know guys that are more traditional martial artists that I would trust any fight, any one of my guys, anybody. I'd rather have some of them than some guys that I know, like, oh, I did this, I fought that, I did that. Okay, great. But can you actually, do you understand the scoring criteria? You can actually apply the judging to what's going on. And thankfully for myself, I've gotten as far as I have and try to, every week's a new week and you kind of go forward from that. But there are so many great guys out there. And I know it's cliche for people to say, oh, this person doesn't know that. And like, it's just not accurate. You know what I mean? It's just not accurate. Now, obviously, I'm going to be biased because I am a judge, but I'm on the front lines a lot of it with several fellow judges. And we're just fortunate to have a good crew out there. Now, judging has never been a better place. It never has. Yeah, it's never been in a better spot.
Again, I don't want you to. I'm not trying to get you to throw anyone under the bus, but do you think that certain fighters, it's easier to judge their fights than others? Does that make sense? Is like, in other words, is there like, if this guy's fighting, you kind of know what to expect?
I would say that's a good question. I would say maybe that was more true in the past, like where, remember, back in the day, we like, oh, this person's going to wrestle and that's going to be the end of it. You know what I mean? And this person, and where the skill sets were pretty wide and ranging. That guy's a pure jiu-jitsu guy. That guy's a pure striker. Now, the fights have never been tougher to judge because everybody is so damn good in everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You still have some specialists, absolutely. You have guys that come from whatever their strength is now, but you see. Now it's just like everybody wrestles, everybody boxes, everybody's, it's the athletic level of everybody. The rounds have never been closer. The job's never been harder in terms of determining that. Are there probably one or a handful of guys that do the same thing over and over again? Sure, but the majority is like these fighters, man. These guys are, like we said, the knowledge now is all out there. So the coaching's never been better, and the resources for these guys have never been better. And I look at it from a judging standpoint too. Like all of us, we all love the sport. We want to get it right for everybody. We'll make sure the right fighter wins every single time. And I think it's never been tougher. It's never been tougher because there are specialists still, but the age of the specialist is waning a bit. You know what I mean? Because some of these guys are so damn good, and there's so much travel. They cross train with so many guys. And, it's amazing to watch. It really is.
Sure. This might be an unfair question, so I'm going to use myself as the example first.
Sure.
So I referee jiu-jitsu, and every once in a while, someone will do something just so amazing, or I'm like, I'll catch myself watching and not score. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
And then it's like, wait, wait a second, hold on. You know what I'm saying? Is that a thing that happens sometimes for you guys or no?
Oh, thank God, no. Because yeah, I know what you're saying, but it's I don't get me wrong. I've reacted to things that have happened when I probably shouldn't have. One of the funny ones that my guys, of course, watching TV, sent me a screenshot of. Who was Jacare fighting? I have to go back and look. I forget who it was, but he had gotten him down, got inside, and locked onto the Kimura. The guy was defending, and they were right in front of me at the cage. So I'm like, oh, he's got this. You know what I mean? It's right in front of me. But the guy's in the cage, and you're like, all right, he's got his hand inside the leg deep, and he's trying to defend it. And it's Jacare who's holding on to it. You know what I mean? It's not just some average dude who's got more on him. And all of a sudden, he's like, I got. He pops it out, the arm comes back. And it's like they caught my face because it was literally right. They were right in front of the panel. That was where I was sitting. And the arm goes back, and I'm like, I'm watching. You see my face go like that. I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. Sure enough, my guys like reverse it, took a picture of me going like that. You couldn't have me. It was right in front of me. You know what I mean? But no. That's probably like, especially with that's sometimes a misconception with judging, like with where the average fan is just kind of watching. There's a difference between watching a fight and judging a fight. I'm sure it's the same thing that you get when you referee jiu-jitsu match. She's watching it on the side and judging it. I'm not watching it. It's a different perspective. I'm judging. I'm keeping track of everything, and it's 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Minute rest in between. So you got to really stay keyed in, because this is not. This is everyone's livelihood's on the line here. You don't want to, because I've been that coach. I've been that fighter. You get it. Like, you need the best people on the job focusing 110%. So,
sure.
And that's part of the reason right now. Like, so let's say 15 years ago, you'd only have like 3, 4, you'd have like maybe 5 judges working the show, and or 6 judges or whatever, and there'd be 15 fights or whatever, and you'd work. If it's a local show, you know what I mean? You're working 15, 15 fights, 16, 20 fights, you're working 18 fights. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now they do it so much better where, there'll be 6 to 8 of us, sometimes 10, depending if they pay you with 15 fights. And you're only working 3 or 4 fights, because they get that it's mentally exhausting to sit there.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Because if you have every fight go 5 minutes, 3 rounds, by the time you get to the main event, if you did every single fight, your brain, you know what I mean? You're still on there, but I think they figured out, we'll get better judging by spreading it out a little bit and keeping everybody sharp that way, so that way you can avoid, like what you mentioned, zoning out or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's worked out great.
Yeah. I find that, okay, leading up to a jiu-jitsu tournament, right? I start, like, say if I'm refereeing in 2 weeks,
right?
I start practicing, using my guys. I'll sit there and I use them, and I'll just, 2 points, 3 points, blah, 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 and I just get more and more strict, and I kind of just like narrow my focus.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, to your point, if I'm refereeing, I'm not watching. I mean, I'm watching, obviously. I'm bearing witness.
It's much different, yeah.
But someone will say, hey, did you see that move I did? I'm like, no, I no. You were watching it. I'm like, I was watching it, but no.
Watching from a referee standpoint, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like even referees in the UFC. They're refereeing. They're not judging. You know what I mean? Or watching. They're focused on the mechanics of refereeing. It's the same thing. There's mechanics to it. You know what I mean? And I'm not a referee, so you'd have to talk to referees. They have their own set of things they do. But yeah, like what we do is like probably a little known thing is like I have more group text messages and WhatsApp with different judges, and that's all we do. It's a little OCD, but that's the way it works. That's the gig. That's the job. So like I'm watching rounds every day. I just got done watching 2 rounds before I got on the line with you. Somebody reached out to me and asked me about 2 rounds. We'd look at, hey, I just want an opinion on some rounds. So I'm fortunate to be connected with some of the best guys on the planet. You know what I mean? And we constantly go over rounds. And it's not just American guys. We got guys in the UK. We got guys in Canada, Brazil. We all need massive group messaging. We go over these rounds again and again in different rounds. And that's how we all constantly trying to calibrate to the same scores. You know what I mean? And that keeps the sword sharp, because if you're not doing it, you're setting yourself up for disaster. You know what I mean? So,
sure.
And we don't. People are like, oh, that round was easy. Okay, certain rounds are. There's a percentage, maybe 25%, maybe a third. You know what I mean? I don't know what the number would be that you could see. That's a clear round, but then the rest are hard. So like, what I mean by hard is like, okay, either really close, 10-9. You know what I mean? Back and forth. Or we're talking 10-8. Okay, you know what I mean? You have to make sure you got, and it can't be just like we're going off the unified rules. So people are like, well, what's the difference between the two? Like, well, lean on the rules. Have you read the rules and applied the rules and understand the rules? So that's why we're always talking with each other on a constant basis. This round, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? All right, and we get a consensus. This person thinks, okay, yeah, I can see why this is. You know what I mean? Why you came to that score. And we lean on the rules, unified rules heavily, because that's where you're starting from. So like judges, like we talk about, this guy has that experience and this experience, and that's great. That brings you to the table, but the ability for a judge to apply the unified rules is what comes at it. So people say, oh, he's only do that because he's a jujitsu, quote unquote, jujitsu judge or a striking judge or whatever. Like, no. We're applying the unified rules. Now, your martial art might have gotten you to the table, but that's not what you're looking at. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
It's you can't have one set of rules until in one perspective. It's like you have to apply the unified rules. That's what we're going by. And again, are we always going to be on the same page? No, we're all human. We're going to error. Obviously, we tried extremely hard not to. And when I say error, typically I would say it's like, okay, it's just a close round. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just a laser close round. That's why there's three of us. You know what I mean? And the one punch that landed heavy on the far side of the cage where they were in motion, I might have saw like, all right, that punch landed. But the judge was right in front of it, saw it, was right in front of it, heard it, saw it smash him, saw the eyes roll back in the guy's head. And that was the tipping point for extremely close round where I thought the punch just landed briefly. This is going 100 miles per hour, you know what I mean? But that's why there's three of us too. But we're applying the unified rules. That's what we're trying to do. We're always collaborating to get on this stage. Yeah.
There was, unless this might have been a rumor, I had heard that like there was discussion about instead of there being a full point difference, there was a half point. Sure. Was that ever a discussion?
That was a discussion back. I have to go back and look what years they did that. They actually had the discussion at one of the ABC meetings, and I mean, for whatever reason, it didn't go through. I know California did with Andy Foster. I believe Andy was there when they were doing it. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to check with the guys from California, where they did it for the amateur program, I believe, where they would take the regular scores and they did a trial with it. I believe Florida did some too. Again, I'd have to double check this. Don't quote me on this. And they tried to apply that. I believe it was Corey Schaefer who came up with the original one. I know Doc Hamilton had put it forward as well. But again, I wasn't at the meetings when they did that. I wasn't part of those, but it wasn't a discussion. I'm up for whatever's going to make the sport better. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So right now we just focus on the scoring criteria that's given before us. You know what I mean? If they ever went to a half point system, then I would clarify that. You know what I mean? I would work on that skill set. Is it interesting? Absolutely. From a judging standpoint, I look at it as very interesting to experiment. But I think you would have to, again, look at the results that California had, and I believe Florida did it as well, and see, and kind of check it out and see what it would work. You don't want to just, I mean, UFC wouldn't do it anyway, where they're just like, all right, let's just haphazardly do it. You know what I mean? It's a form of disaster. You want to have a pool of information to go forward with. Now, I know a lot of guys would love it, you know what I mean? But you're just going to have to make sure we train officials to adjust it and make the adjustment. So I would like it. At least try it. I'm always up for trying, right? You're always up for trying something. But you can't do it at the highest level off a whim. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you got to have, and they got to be on board with it too. You know what I mean? You can't have UFC or Bellator and they're like, we don't like this. Like, well, no, you're forced to do that. It kind of doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? They're the big dogs in the room. You want everybody we want to promote the sport. Like it comes back to this. We love the sport. You know what I mean? We're here in its starting days. We want to see it grow. We want to see it move forward. We don't want just change for the sake of change. We want to make it better. And hey, if they try it at a lower level first and they keep trying it and they decide, hey, it doesn't really help, then we don't do it. But maybe it does help. Maybe then it's open for discussion. Always up for discussions. You know what I mean? Let's talk, let's figure it out. Sometimes people come up with crazy ideas that are whacked out. That half point I don't think is whacked out. I would agree. It should be up for discussion. You know what I mean? But again, I'm just going to work on whatever's in front of me. Right now the unified rule, and thankfully we've been pretty busy, and that keeps us busy enough.
Do you think? So there have been some fights that were really, really close. And I think, those are obviously most likely the most fun, right? To watch, to
watch, not judge, but yeah.
Now, so I don't think people always get it. Like you'll hear people talk afterwards. Oh, he should have won. Da, 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 da. Look at his face. Look at this guy's face. And it's like, okay, yeah. Yes, this guy's face is a bloody mess. But if you look at the rules, and I'm just going by what I know of the
Sure.
rules. Like you live it. But I'm like, if you look at the rules, he didn't win.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he busted this guy up.
Sure.
But it's not a street fight. It's a sporting event. You know what I mean?
Damage is part of the rules, and it's called impact, but that's definitely part of it. I always, whenever people are saying, look at his face or that type of thing, this person should have run. One, I always say, have you looked at the rules? That's the first thing, because that's the starting point. We can't have a discussion until we're both talking the same language, right? You know what I mean? We're both starting from the same standpoint. So I'm approaching it from the unified rules on how to score. If you're approaching it from what he looks like, you know what I mean? It's like, all right, I get it. I get what you're saying, but you can't just go off a whim. It goes back to what I said before. Like, you can't just be like, okay, say if it's a wrestling guy watching it. He took him down 5 times. Look, the fight stats say 5 takedowns. Okay, takedowns are hard to do, but okay, he took him down, he hit his butt, he jumped right back up. Okay, there's a scale there, you know what I mean? So there's a scale between, okay, so you're going to give credit for a takedown, sure, but how much credit do you give it? Okay, he took him down, he hit his butt, he popped right back up. Okay, next one, he took him down, he held him down. Okay, it's more, right? Okay, he took him down and, improved position, tried to finish, started striking, went for submission. Okay, that's going to get way more, you know what I mean? So, like, you're not going to look at just from the wrestling perspective. You have to look at it from the criteria. Read the criteria, and we'll talk from there. You know, you can't both start off, you're speaking French and I'm speaking English and expect to get to the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, we have to make sure we're all talking the same language here first.
Sure.
And go for that. And, of course, even that, like, sometimes rounds are just close, and we don't see it the same way. Like I mentioned before, sometimes it's an angle, a shot that is the tipping point. These rounds, in fact, these guys are so good now. It's amazing to watch. But the difference between guys are so minute sometimes. But that's part of the game, and you're always going to have people that disagree. This is not some magic utopia where everyone's going to agree on who won a round. It doesn't work that way. That's why there's 3 of us. It's a judgment. It's like, okay, let's figure it out.
Right on.
And even split decisions, sometimes you look at, like, oh, that was so close, but you can see it, And sometimes people argue it, like, all right, I get it. If you're a fan of that, so remember, I'm not a fan of it. I'm here to judge the fight. You know what I mean? I'm not. Some guys, you lost money on it. I'm like, well, that's your you problem. That's not me. I'm like, I can see why you think the guy lost. You know what I mean, or won or whatever. I can't help you with that.
Right. Well, you don't have to name the fight. Have there been any fights where at the end of the fight, regardless of the score or the outcome, you were like, I'm glad I did not have to go and judge that fight?
Oh,
where it was so close, so crazy,
all the time. You said that you guys just going, sometimes it's a stylistic fight. Like, you get guys standing in front of each other, throwing 100 punches around. And you're like, whoa, I don't even know who won that round. Like I said, for example, let's say there's a dozen fights on the card. We don't do all 12 like we used to back in the day. You're doing so many, you know what I mean? So, like, when we're not judging it, I am watching it. I can't help but judge it a little bit as I'm watching it, just the nature.
Sure.
And sometimes you're like 2 rounds in, you're like, wow, this is an incredibly close fight. I haven't kept track of it 100% because I'm off. You're going to give your brain a rest when you're off. You're watching, but you're giving your brain a rest, Yeah. Because you have 2 more fights to go. And they could all go all decisions, you know what I mean? But as you're watching, you're like, oh, that's an amazing fight. I'm glad I don't have that one, like, jokingly, you know what I mean?
Right.
I wouldn't do any fight, but excuse me. But yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, damn, that was crazy. You know what I mean? That was crazy.
There's been a couple of fights that have happened, and I can remember I've sent you a message on Facebook messengers. I'm like, yo, who won this fight? And you're like, I gotta rewatch it.
Yeah, I've done that too, where guys have, when we're done with the show, it's funny, I turn my phone back on when the show is over, and I'll have 10 messages. Wow, that was a crazy fight, or this, that, who won that? I'm like, if I didn't judge it, I couldn't tell you. I'm like, I got to go back and watch, which we're constantly watching, you know what I mean? So, but that's the sport, man. And thankfully, hopefully you have one of those where guys are going back and forth. We've also had where guys do nothing and they circle.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do something, please, do something. So that's part of it. It's all fun, part of the stress.
How about the women's fights? They've come a long way.
Oh, my God. They're amazing.
Yeah.
They're amazing, some of these women's fights. It's like, it's been fun to watch. That's part of the sport grow. Because as you can remember, I remember having women competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments in the 90s. You're just begging for somebody to show up. And then boys divisions, men's divisions. And you're just like, dude, now it's amazing to watch some of these ladies.
Oh, it's crazy.
Crazy. The skill sets are crazy. It's there's no bad, it's pretty rare you get a bad fight anywhere now. I mean, sometimes you get some weird stylistic matchups, but the women's fights are just as awesome as the men's. It's just like the fights of the fights. It's been fun to watch it grow.
Yeah. Have you ever judged amateur, or have you always just judged pro?
No, I've judged amateur. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you get your chops. Like I said, you start with whatever's presented before you. You know what I mean? And in Jersey, it was amateur and pro. And then as time went by, I've just done more pro, obviously. I also will be I'll work in Pennsylvania on occasion, where they have both amateur and pro sometimes on their shows. So yeah, you do both. Yeah, definitely do both. I'll do whatever. If I have a weekend open and the first one the call gets the work, I'll work. So.
Mm-hmm. One had their first event on TV yesterday, right?
Yep.
You haven't done any work with them yet, have you?
No, that's pretty far out in Asia. I haven't had a chance to go with them. I've been really fortunate in terms of ones that I've done, and I've been really fortunate to travel the world from Japan to Israel to Budapest to all over the place, Brazil, Canada, all over England. But I haven't done one yet. Yeah, not yet. They have that different scoring.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, their rule set's a little different.
Yeah. Listen, I will do any rule set as long as you get the proper training to do so. Mm-hmm. I would have to really kind of run through it and practice it to see. I know they do it all at the end. You decide at the end.
Yeah.
They say the totality of the fight, and that's fine. Whatever the rule set's the rule set. We'll do it from a judge's perspective. Like, all right, give me the criteria, and I'll apply it. But you'd like a little bit of practice first, and kind of go through that.
Sure.
And I'm sure guys, like I said, a lot of the top guys I work, they can figure it out quickly. Everybody can very easily do it. The one at the end always concerns me a little bit because people tend to forget what happens in the beginning of the round.
Mm-hmm.
So, he ended in mount. Like, all right, what about the other 4 minutes? You know what I mean? That's the one that kind of concerns me about that off the top of my head. Now, I'd have to watch more and kind of apply it in terms of one. I watch the fights, but different. I watch it because I'm enjoying to watch the fights.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a major difference. I do it with my students all the time. Like, you're going to watch fights. Am I going to judge them? You're going to watch them. Like, they'll do it. They'll come like, I'm not doing that again, Cologne. I didn't enjoy the fights. I'm over here thinking, trying to keep track. I'm like, I get it. It's different. It's definitely different. Yeah.
Totally is.
Yeah.
So now there's a good thing to bring up, and that is, I think most fans forget that fights are scored round by round, and it's scored from the beginning of that round to the end of that round, right? As opposed to, it isn't just, okay, he won. You kind of got to process the action as it's happening, right? And as it's starting to conclude itself, right?
Yeah. So it's a 10-point must system. So the winner's got to get 10. And then you got to decide the gap from there. Is it 10-9 or 10-8, right? Now there's a 10-10s and there's 10-7s, but those are like unicorns. You know what I mean? Like you're not really going to see that too often. And the best way, I'm not sure who explained it this way first. One of the best ways I've heard it explained, maybe it was McCarthy. I'd have to check if he was the first one to say this, but think of it like tug of war. You got it, you got a rope, and you got a little flag in the middle, right? And there's the line. On this side, the blue, this side's the red. You know what I mean? And as the round goes by, all right, blue did this, blue did that. They start building a lead. And red does it, it comes back a little bit. But don't forget what blue did enough to get past that center. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, let's say blue is dominating the round the first 3 minutes, whatever, and then red starts doing well to bring it back. Well, did they do enough to bring it back to the other side? Does that make sense?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the best way to kind of look at it. In terms of simplifying, don't forget that there's all 5 minutes count. So sometimes they go, oh, he took that takedown at the end, wins the round. I'm like, no. I mean, if it was close, there's a scale to it. Like I said before, did he hit his butt and stand back up? Was it a high amplitude takedown where he took him, he double-legged his feet straight in the air, he spiked him on his shoulder and back? Okay, that's going to count more than you tripping my foot and me hitting my butt and me standing right back up. It's not the same thing. You know what I mean? But then you have to keep track. You got to keep track and decide which side of the line it ends up going. That's one of the easier ways to explain it. I've always felt. Think of the tug of war. Yeah. And then you get into the 9s and the 8s in terms of the difference between the two. And just always say, lead on the criteria. Read the criteria. That's your best bet.
So now, let's say something like an athlete commits a foul, right? Now it's a foul that you saw, it's a foul, in the rules that's a foul, and it's deduction worthy, but the referee doesn't say anything. What happens there? You act only if the referee says.
Yeah, I can only do whatever the referee's in charge. The referee's in charge of the fight. If he gives the point, whether I think it's a penalty or not, irrelevant. That's not my job. My job is to score the round. So if they take a point, then I will take a point. You know what I mean? If they don't take a point, that's their job to tell me if they thought. Yeah, you can't have 4 people making different decisions. You know what I mean?
Right.
One referee decides one thing and 3 judges all decide another. It's like, it's not good. Yeah. You got to stick to whatever the referee. That's why the referee is the ultimate decision maker in the cage. You know what I mean? He gets to do his job. That's his job, and we'll do our job scoring it. And you'll see it. Sometimes they forget to announce it, but that got way better now than they used to. You see the referee do it, and the announcers will say, oh, by the way, reminder, when you read the scores at the end, you see the referee going 1 point. He's going in each direction. He's just showing the judges minus 1 point, 1 point. Got it.
Right.
And then I'll score the round, and then you put the minus, and you go from there. Yeah.
I judged an amateur show, amateur MMA in New York. Done it twice. And I remember one time there was a foul like that. And the referee, he made eye contact. He's like, you take a point from him, you take a point from him.
It does. Yeah. You don't want confusion. Yeah. God forbid. Yeah. Specifically amateur shows, because, you have officials, fighters that are working on their skill set, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure it's clear that everybody gets it. The cornerman, everybody gets it. You lost the point for whatever reason. But I don't get not my job. You tell me what I got to take a point or no. Yes or no. That's it. That's all I got. Sure.
Do you think there are some fighters who maybe turned pro too early?
I think that's true across the board, right? Like, there's always going to be guys that turn pro too early, maybe too late, to too many fights. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a strange thing from a coaching standpoint too. Like it now more than ever, like we had mentioned before, there's amateur programs, so you can, because you remember, you go back to the glory days of boxing where you had all these guys coming up through the Olympics and amateur ranks. These guys have 100 fights before they turn pro. And these ridiculous numbers, you know what I mean? But by the time they turn pro, they were ready, There's a balance there somewhere, I think, between that And well, I had 3 amateur fights, and I go right to pro. It's probably not a good idea because, like I said, you have way more empty buckets that need to be filled, right, before you do it.
Right.
So I would think that's true. Now, in terms of getting to the big show, I couldn't. That's a person by person thing. I don't know in terms of UFC or Bellator. I would, that's a definitely person by person thing. But you've seen it on the local level, where guys are, let's say, some guys are like kind of forced where they smoke like the first 3 or 4 of their opponents, and then they can't get another fight because the video's out, and like, well, I got to go pro because I want to do it,
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember, when I tried to coach guys, I'm like, all right, do a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments. Let's say you're a jiu-jitsu guy, or grappling guy. All right, we're gonna go do some Thai boxing. Like, what? Well, you want to fight MMA, right? Like, you can't always use that to bail you out. Go get punched in the face and deal with it. Do a boxing fight. Yeah, do a boxing fight. You can't kick either. Can't clinch. Oh shit. All right, yeah, figure it out. Deal with the stress. You know what I mean? Deal with the challenge. And that's the best way to do it. Now, most guys do that, but not always. Again,
sure.
That's their issue.
What's the most fun part of your job as a judge?
I mean, I love doing it. You know what I mean? Without a doubt, like you said earlier, we just love the martial arts. So being involved in it's fun. There's 2 sides to the coin of fun. So like, there's the fun side where if you're fortunate enough, I've been blessed enough to travel to places that I would never have gone. So you're always excited about going out there. When you're all done, you're not too excited about getting home. Just want to hurry up and get home. That type of thing. So, so that part is always interesting. But I love it all, man. Like the camaraderie, the challenge. You know what I mean? I like the challenge, the mental challenge, the excitement of being connected to the sport that we love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've been so long, and trying to just make sure the right guy wins. You know what I mean? Make sure the right guy wins, and the criteria is being applied. What's going to be fun actually coming up is in Florida, when we go back down there, they actually have a crowd back in there. You know what I mean? Like, you don't realize how much the crowd is. Like, we were in Abu Dhabi. I did the last 2 shows in Abu Dhabi, and they had some crowds there, for the last one when McGregor fought Poirier. And they didn't have a lot of people, but they had people in there. We're like, whoa, it's crowd again. It's kind of like, sometimes it's great. You come out and like a big arena, it's packed. Like, all right, the big show's here. Let's go. It's time to work. That part, you love that part. Like, all right, let's get to it. Let's focus. Let's get moving.
Sure.
So that'll be fun to have that back again. Because I've told the story to my students. I remember the first one that I worked at the Apex Center without a crowd. And you're like, wow, this is really weird. The very first fight, and you ended up liking it from a judging standpoint because you could hear everything. You can hear everything.
Yeah.
And the very first fight that I did, and I don't remember what round it is. It was 1 or 2, but it was early in the fight. So these guys are lined up like this on the far side of the cage. The striker's coming forward, the other guy's backing away. And as this guy does a spin hook kick to the head, as this guy's retreating to go with it. And they're on the far side of the cage. And things are going like that. Now, any other time with a massive crowd, I would have thought he missed it. He kicked as the guy went the other direction, but I heard the plunk of his heel on the guy's head.
Oh!
Like it clipped it. It didn't blast him because he kept moving. Okay. And you're looking for reactions too. Some guys are good at hiding the reactions, but I heard it just from years of teaching, and you could hear these things. You know what I mean? You're
yeah.
And I just kind of grinned as I'm watching. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like, I can actually hear everything. They're on the far side of the cage, you know what I mean? So that'll be interesting to adjust back to what it was, you know what I mean?
Sure. As a coach, the first time we coached and there's no crowd, it was really strange for me. I'm like, wow, this is weird.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For the most part. There's a couple of things. So, like, I'm used to yelling like a maniac. You know what I mean?
You don't have to as much, yeah.
And a lot of times I'll yell something that's like unprofessional. Like I'm like, rip the guy's fucking skull from their fucking body. But now I'm like, you can't say that.
What's wrong with that guy? That's great. That's freaking great. It's been funny to hear coaching. But you know what's been good is like you can hear some great coaching. You hear top guys, you know, good stuff. And you hear some things that you're like, okay, it is what it is. You know what I mean? You can sometimes you can hear the difference in coaching. And it's been a good experience. I get the body shots. Again, miles an hour, you can hear it. And again, difference between a toe hitting, you hear that, and the thump. Like, oh, that got in good. And you're always looking for actions, but now you added your another sense. You know what I mean? So besides hearing it, you hear it more because of the lack of crowd, so you can process more information. And that's always good when you get more information, so you can make a more educated decision. But them body shots and the leg kicks, you can just hear them. You can hear everything. Oh. You get thunk, and you're like, oh, that's a good one. You know what I mean? And then you see the reaction as a confirmation. You're like, oh yeah, that was a better shot than most. Than like, let's say, cumulative strikes versus the impactful strikes. You
know. You know, at this point in the game for me, I have a greater appreciation than I ever have for the whole thing, for what you do, for what the powers that be, like when they put these things together, and of course the athletes. And so I enjoy like this I'm enjoying this conversation. I enjoy discussing the rules. And I also catch myself sitting there when these guys are getting hit with these shots. I'm like, dude, you are going to be in such a world of pain tomorrow. Thank God you're hopped up on adrenaline. You are going to be limping and crawling. I hope you got some ibuprofen, brother, because you're going to need all of it.
Ice bath. All about the ice bath, right? You're watching like, dude, you're going to need medical attention, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's brutal. Like some of the fights too, stylistically, these guys, it's amazing to watch these guys at the highest level and just crushing each other. It's amazing. Like I said, being a lover of martial arts as we watch, it's artwork to us. So when people watch, they're always the average person watch, oh, that's so violent. I'm like, oh my God, did you see the 15 things that were going on? I'm like, that's damn Picasso going on out there. You know what I mean? And we love every minute of it, watching it, and it's like you said, the pain thing, you're like, oh yeah, that's gonna hurt for a month. I'm like, oh, that elbow, you fought out of an arm bar or something. You're like, yeah, that elbow's never gonna be the same again. You know what I mean? Like, that's gonna be bothering you until the day you drop off the planet. You know what I mean? Like, that's as we older we get, but that's not an injury. That's just a new permanent disability. You know what I mean? Right. That's just what happens. You're gonna have to adjust to that, right? I'm like, I'm glad I'm not you guys. That's amazing.
So I got 3 more questions, and then I'll let you get some rest. The first one, couple years ago, Demian Maia fights John Fitch.
Okay.
Demian Maia basically took his back for like 12, 13 minutes. I counted.
Okay.
How do you score that?
Okay, so you got to lean on the criteria. So Demian Maia is a great guy to watch because he's always attacking, Mm-hmm. So in the criteria, we have the 3 Ds. It's really 2 Ds and an I for impact, but because they used that word back in the day when they did it because they didn't want damage because they're trying to get all the states to okay all the rules. But now I think they're trying to go back to just it's understood as damage, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to have effective grappling, effective striking are your number one thing, right? It's right in the criteria. In terms of flipping over to a 10-8, for example, compared to a 10-9? Is he trying to finish the fight? Is he going for a submission? Is he just holding on? Mm-hmm. Demian Maia is a monster. I don't remember that fight off the top of my head. I have to go back and look, obviously, and watch the rounds. But you've seen guys backpack guys and not really try to end the fight. You know what I mean? And what they're looking for, the judge is looking for the effective striking, effective grappling, but we're looking for the 3 Ds being dominance, duration, and damage. So the damage is a key part of it. It's like you want to see if they're trying to end the fight, not just hanging on, because you don't want guys doing the old school lay and pray, just holding on to guys and not doing anything. And early on in the sport where you would see that guys get a takedown and just hold on and win the fight. But I mean, we're way past that now for a long time now, where guys are even realizing they get taken down and okay, fine, I got taken down to the guard, but I'm going to start elbowing and punching and staying busy inside the guard, and they're going to win that exchange. And like I said, if we're talking about the tug of war and the flag, which side it goes on, like, okay, good takedown. Okay, as soon as you got down there, you're not doing anything, and now you're eating heavy punches and elbows. It's going to come back over. You know what I mean? So you have to do something to take down. So Damian Maia, that's a great example. He's a finisher, right? He's always trying to rip someone's head. You know what I mean? And he's a pleasure to watch. So that's how you would look for it. Is guys, are they trying to finish the fight, or are they just hanging on for dear life? Now they're going to win a round if that's the only thing that occurs in the round. They did their effective grappling, absolutely. But if you're talking about difference between a 9 and an 8, you got to lean on those 3 Ds. And the rules say you got to have at least 2 of those to consider it. And if all 3 occur, then you have to give the 10-8, which is domination, duration, damage. Yeah. So again, that's a gray area. So again, you got to watch it, and that's what you should always be looking for. Like, they're trying to finish the fight. What are they doing? They're trying to submit them, or are they just hanging out? And Damian Maia has always been. He's another one you watch his artwork. You know what I mean? Watching him.
Oh yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Second question: Where? Okay, 2-part, maybe. Where has been the coolest event? Or, I mean, has there been a coolest event where you're like, man, this is what it's all about? This was an awesome time.
I would say I've had several of those, like historical. Like when I went to Brazil and the arena, what the heck is arena? It's late at night here in Brainport. The arena in Rio where I believe Carlos had fought and Carlson, Hickson had fought Zulu. That arena in Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool. Trying to be on the same floor as that. What's the name of the arena? I'm brain farting on it, but that was great. Then we went over at the in Japan where they used to have the Pride. That arena, that was cool. Got to do that, and that's when Fedor fought Quentin recently. That was right before COVID. So that was cool to do that. Obviously, the Garden, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are kind of cool spots in terms of arenas, like historically, that type of thing. It's been cool to kind of be part of that. And then it's cool just to be fortunate enough to travel all over the place and just go in different states and different countries. And I've been to Brazil. I've been to Brazil, I'd have to look, maybe 3 or 4 times. And then, like, from a judging standpoint, I've been to Ireland, Northern Ireland, England several times. Like I said, Budapest, Abu Dhabi, I just went to, Japan. I'm trying to forget something. Hawaii, you know what I mean? Just to go Hawaii, you know what I mean? Just crazy. I just really, really, Italy. Just really lucky. I'm really fortunate to do this. You know what I mean? And on top of it, you love what you do. You know, they say, like, we have the saying, like, yeah, they pay me for the travel. I judge for free.
Right on. Right?
Watching the fight, oh, just pay me to get out there, and then we'll go from there. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Last thing. So, what does the sport need to get to the next, maybe not next level, but the next phase of the sport, the next transition? Is there something missing? Is there something needed? Is there something that should happen? Is there something that's coming?
So about from an officiating standpoint, or?
Yeah.
I would say, because it's such a young sport, on the level that it's at now, and I'm going to speak from a judging perspective. I think more people need to be on the same page of what's going on in terms of judging. You know what I mean? In terms of the scoring criteria and understanding it better. We still have where it's, you have, whether it's media thinking one way, commentators thinking one way, and the scoring criteria being another. It's not on the same page, and it's not from a lack of with bad intent or anything like that. It's just such a young sport, and sometimes some of the old cliches that we cling on to that get repeated over and over again, we set ourselves back. You know what I mean? And we hear the same silly stuff sometimes. It's like, okay, like that guy, like you said, that guy was bleeding more. Okay, that's not how it's really scored. Like one guy had a bloody nose, meanwhile he took an ass whooping for 4 minutes. It's like, okay, that's not how the scoring criteria reads. But so it'd be great if we continue to get on the same page and communicate better with fans. Now, you're never going to have everybody happy, but we want everybody, from coaches, from fighters, to media, to commentators, where everybody's kind of on the same page in terms of communicating the rules. So, like, for example, like, imagine if, I don't know, you're watching NFL and, you don't understand that there's 4 downs and the commentator is saying it's 4, but you think it's 5. The coach thinks it's 3.5. It's kind of weird. It would never happen, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I can only speak from a judging standpoint. So I want everybody to be on the same page, and
sure,
it's just that way we can all improve the sport better. Because sometimes I think it looks bad when misconceptions continue.
Okay, yeah.
Misconceptions continue. It's just it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? It just sets us back when a fighter thinks a certain way, a coach thinks a certain way, a commentator thinks another way. The media thinks a certain way. And I get it, not everyone's job it is to be an official, but I just want everybody to be on the same page. I think that'll help a lot. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you get grief for a score, you hear it's a robbery, but really it's just a close fight. It's okay to say it was a close fight.
Right.
You don't want to always cry wolf, you know what I mean? So when you need to cry wolf and there's a real problem, but you've always said wolf every time, it takes away the power of it, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure if we're all talking the same language.
Okay.
That's what I think will help the sport. Again, from an officiating standpoint, I can only speak from a judging standpoint, but I think that would be beneficial. Yeah, take a course. I tell people, take a course. Like, you're in New England here. Kevin runs a course. Kevin in Massachusetts, so it's like Kevin McDonald course. You know what I mean? If you're a fighter, you're a coach. If you're a fan, go take the course. It's a weekend course. You know what I mean? Judging scores for referees. You can understand what's going on. Just to know better from the sport. I'm a fan of learning, right? We're all fans of learning something. Heck, go take it. It ain't gonna kill you. Spend the weekend like, oh, I never looked at it. Watch a round. Go back and watch an old round that you don't know the results for, and turn off the commentary. Write down your scores. See what you come up with, and go see MMAdecisions.com. See if it matches. You know what I mean? Like, oh, why did that? Ask questions. Go to local commissions. And when you go watch a fight, keep your score on the side. Sometimes some places let you shadow judge. You know what I mean? The guys shadow judge, and then you can kind of figure out that way. That's a good way to kind of get. All right, you don't have to become a high level, judge or anything, but at least you can get the criteria and kind of understand what's going on better in the sport.
Right on.
I can't see how that wouldn't be beneficial.
Sure.
Well,
all right. If someone wants to find some quality mixed martial arts training in New Jersey, they go to
Tongue Dragon MMA down there in Bayville.
Right.
If you're too far away, let me know. I'll find somebody for you. I got plenty of north south. I'm like central-ish. So if anybody wants to come on down, you can come on down. I appreciate that.
Cool. Listen, man, I'm gonna be looking for you tomorrow, or listening for you tomorrow.
Yep.
Make sure you're not reacting too much to someone getting knocked out. And listen, this was awesome. I appreciate it. I'd like to do a part 2 if we could at some point.
Sure.
All right. And then next time I'll be there. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you how it ended up that we had to Zoom this. Interesting story.
Yeah. All right. I like interesting stories.
The
whole quarantine thing is what it is. It's like, what do we do, right? So,
right.
when my test came back, I'm negative. I'm good. So.
Cool, cool. So,
I appreciate
yeah,
it, man. It's been a
man.
good time. Good big time catching up with you.
Thank you, brother.